All right, welcome everyone for a live. I apologize for late. I was having a lot of technical issues, and I still my internet may or may not be spot like I'm on Ether, but this is the authenticity of a live show. And some days we have some tech troubles. All right, but welcome to Mast 360's weekly webinar. Today we are going to be talking about mold and kids, and we are so glad to have our special guest, Dr. Jill Crista, with us. I'll introduce her in a second, as well as both of our lead practitioners who are able to join us today, Alex Bingham and Kimberly Quirk. So before we get started, our disclaimers, today's session is for informational and educational purposes. It's not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illness. Please be sure to discuss any health recommendations with your healthcare provider. And just a reminder that some of the links shared during this presentation or on our website are affiliate links, which means Mast 360 may take a very small commission if you purchase through our links. We only recommend products that we love, use personally, or use in the Mast 360 clinic. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how mold symptoms can look different in children, supporting detox and healing in children, and hopefully the first steps for families on a healing journey, families on a healing journey. And if time allows, we'll have a live Q&A. So please be sure to ask your questions only once. It helps us keep track of the questions as they come in. Please keep them on the topic of today, mold and MCAS, mold and kids. And also, please understand we're unable to answer in-depth personal health questions. So I'm going to bring our special guests up in a second. I see some of you are already putting in where you're tuning in from. I'm in Maryland. The weather is beautiful. For those who don't know me, I forgot to introduce myself. If it's your first time here, I'm Jamie Fries-Miller. I'm a health coach here at Mast 360, and I'm so excited for today's show. Before we get going, I just have some quick reminders for everyone that we are actually switching the time of our live show. Currently it's 1 p.m. Eastern. I know we started a little bit late today, but 1 p.m. Eastern, it's going to be moved an hour forward or behind to 12 p.m. I guess that's forward, earlier. So 12 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Pacific. So it's going to be an hour earlier starting next week. I also want to mention that it is our mold month. So the topics of this whole month show are going to be on mold. For some of you who have already been through that process or are just learning about that process, this is going to be great information for you to kind of check in, make sure you've addressed that piece of your journey and your healing. In the Mast 360 clinic, it's the #1 root cause of mast cell activation syndrome. And if your question does not get answered today, keep it, write it down, because next week we're doing a whole live Q&A where on the topic of mold. So you'll have an amazing opportunity to get those burning mold questions answered. Okay, sorry, that was a long introduction today. Let's bring up Dr. Jill Crista, our special guest, Kimberly Quirk, and Alex Bingham. So our special guest today, Dr. Jill Crista, is a pioneering naturopathic doctor, best-selling author, devoted educator, and creative innovator. Her superpower is to make complex medical concepts simple and digestible for the average person. Her passion is to elevate the wellness of the planet via the well-being of her inhabitants. I love that so much. Her books, memberships, and online courses support those wanting concrete steps to conquer health and challenges. And her focus is on conditions that cause injury to the brain and nervous system, including mold, PANS and PANDAS, Lyme disease, and concussion. Dr. Jill Crista, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
Yeah. All right, so let me remove our slides here so we're all nice and big on the screen. Can you give us a brief overview of how you got into addressing mold and working with kids?
I was started as a family practice naturopathic doctor, so that's how I started working with kids, because I love working with families. When you can help mom feel better, usually everybody is served by that.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And when I found myself in Wisconsin, I found myself in Lyme country, and I really didn't understand Lyme very well, but got trained in that. And through the Lyme world, found that once I identified it was Lyme and I applied the treatment, lo and behold, when you treat the cause, people tend to get better. But I had this subset of patients that just weren't responding. And I have a ginormous toolbox because I can use the herbs, the homeopathy, the topical hydrotherapy, the antibiotics if needed, pharmaceuticals, and still had this set of patients that weren't responding. And in one of them, during a remodel of their basement, they discovered toxic black mold through the whole basement. And they estimated it was a 10 or 12-year exposure because the leak was from the previous remodel. So here we have this like long-standing mold issue. And I thought, I wonder if the mold has anything to do with why he's not responding to Lyme. And as I hit PubMed, I was like, oh my goodness, I am missing mold. And I need to start asking about this thing. Because then when we addressed mold in him, his Lyme got better without any other changes. And when I asked the other people who are non-responders, I think almost all but one had either a current or past exposure to mold. And that's when I just, the Lyme community is a very connected community. And so those patients started to share that, hey, this lady is getting me better, maybe go see her. And that's how I became the mold lady. We all of a sudden got people flying from all over the world to come in and get their Lyme treated. And it was through addressing the mold.
I think everyone on this call, myself included, has a Lyme connection as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and the mold connection.
Mm-hmm. Very common.
Yeah. Many in our community are familiar with mold illness in adults, but when it comes to children, how does mold illness show up differently?
Usually they will have some kind of a skin thing first because the children's skin detox organ is very intact and effective. Then usually there's a behavioral component before we would see anything else show up. So, some kind of a skin reaction. Again, it's going to depend on which mold and which mycotoxin they are exposed to. Some are more skin absorbent than others. But typically with a kid, it's skin, behavior, gut, sinus, or respiratory. So with an adult, it tends to go the opposite direction because we're a little more toxic.
Yeah. So are there any like commonly overlooked signs in children?
Well, there's obvious ones that the CDC recognizes, which is sinusitis, otitis media, asthma. That would be if they're exposed to the spores. But so often in these patients, the spores are all trapped behind the building material, and it's the chemicals that are coming into the breathable zone. So in a lot of times in kids, it's going to be more of that, what I just kind of went through. It can be eczema. And then when we get to the behavior stuff, it can be either a kid that is overreactive and hyperactive because of the neuroinflammation, or the other way that they're comatose. And, sometimes teachers would say things like, oh, they're just such a good student. And they're, in a moldy school, you have like the kids, it just depends on how their brain is going to respond to it. But it's going to be, the wackadoodle kids and then these kids that just are comatose and not able to learn. And then when it gets to the gut, this is going to be more like picky eating, food restricting, just all kinds of manner of alternating constipation, diarrhea. And then when we get to the respiratory, it's going to be frequent infections. This will be the key that like they get sick every time someone around them gets sick, and it takes longer to get better.
Yeah. I think that was interesting that you said about like the eczema and like, the gut issues, right? Like immediately parents are just thinking like, oh, they have food sensitivities.
Right.
And
why?
So,
right.
Always, we're always asking
yeah.
why. But that's a really interesting perspective on just like common things that majority of children nowadays are experiencing is the food sensitivities and the eczema.
And anxiousness is a very common response to mold. So if it is in their home and this is where they sleep, there can be a lot of anxiousness about bedtime, separation anxiety, waking and not being refreshed. So, these kids that look like they worked all night long. So that's kind of a classic, like you could be sleeping in mold. And then, again, the comatose kid or the wired ones don't go to sleep because mold blocks vitamin D. It'll downregulate the receptors for vitamin D. And in my experience in adults and also in kids, when vitamin D is low, you kind of become a night owl because you don't have that sun medicine, in the body. So it can be hard to get to sleep. They stay up too late. And it could be the anxiety driving it, but often it's also just the low vitamin D. So it's an easy marker if you're, if you're drawing blood with kids, not every kid can you do that, but just checking, vitamin D levels, vitamin A levels. Those are standard tests. They're covered by insurance. And if either or both are low, and they're supplementing D, that's mold because it's blocking the receptors.
Yeah, I think a big question that Alex and I were wondering was, since children's detox systems are not fully developed, how does that affect both like testing reliability and then how do like children process mold toxins?
I don't say that the detox systems aren't necessarily fully developed. It's just that they're better actually at using their skin as a detox method. The nice thing about kids is they do respond very quickly because things aren't as toxic typically. The only caveat in that, and that fits into what you guys do so much, is that if a child has been exposed to mold in utero, specifically the mycotoxins, they concentrate in the placenta and in utero, and they bioactivate. So whatever mom is getting exposed to, depending on the toxin, baby is getting 2 to 10-fold what mom is getting. And studies show that if they have been exposed in utero to any to a significant degree of the mycotoxins, their immune system will preferentially generate mast cells to respond to things all across the immunity. So this is going to be a kid that's wired to have more mast cell problems because of the exposure in mom. And so we have to work more diligently to boost their innate immunity when they come out. And a lot of times I'm using things like Aloe, which is also an anti-mast cell. It's a mast cell stabilizer, antihistamine. It's been shown on par in studies. It's on par with ketotifen, with cromolyn sodium, with corticosteroids, and it's an immune modulator. So you're doing, and it's a mycotoxin binder. So you're getting a lot of things with that one plant. Astragalus, larch tree. These are kind of the things that I go to. Colostrum, if they can do dairy. We have to do a lot more lifting in those kids to get their immune system up. If their immune system can respond properly, we don't have to work so hard on the detox.
Okay.
Because the microbiome actually does degrade many of the mycotoxins. So they're good detoxers through their skin. So another kind of little hack is you can use their skin. I like to use mud. I use mud a lot with kids. Even little infants, you can use, there's this particular mud called peat mud. It's a very ancient detox called peloid therapy, P-E-L-O-I-D. And I use that interchangeably with something called moor mud or M-O-O. So mud from the moors, basically. There's some specific clean mud from the Czech Republic that when it's kept wet and goopy and isn't dried out, it has enzymes and probiotics, but it also has the drawing effect that mud has. So you can get this great exchange of like drawing out the toxin through their skin and then contributing to the skin things that are going to help the immunity of the skin. And it's just lovely. I mean, and the kids it's so giggly fun. Like, let's make detox fun, Hey, get muddy. Yeah.
I have my son rub magnesium lotion on his body at night, and we say, I love my body. I take care of my body because my body takes care of me. And it's just, we've done it from such a young age that it's just part of bedtime routine. It's like his normal. And yeah, so like anytime you make it play, it's fun. Yeah, I love that. Follow-up question that was not on our list. And Alex and Kimberly, if you have any questions on this too, because we don't take anyone under 3, but I'm thinking like, we know that you just said, the mycotoxins can accumulate in the placenta.
Mm-hmm.
I've also heard through the breast milk. So are mold toxic moms passing mycotoxins on through the breast milk? And then you mentioned the infant can do like the mud, but are there other ways to support like an infant's immune system?
Sure. Well, and also through mom, if it's a breastfed kid, strictly breastfed, then we do a lot through mom. So, getting her on antifungals, getting her immunity, getting her on the astragalus, the aloe, that kind of thing. And then it comes through the breast milk. Okay. Typically, you're going to get more, you can get some mycotoxins through breast milk because they're fat soluble and breast milk is very fatty. But you're going to get more benefit than not, because there's bonding, there's probiotics, all the things. Because I know in the Lyme community, they're like, you can get Borrelia because you see Borrelia bacteria in breast milk as well. And some doctors will say, don't breast milk and use formula. And I think you're getting more benefit than
I'm glad you said that, because I feel like mothers, when they learn that, have to go through the guilt or the shame cycle. And I don't want other moms to feel that. I know that I felt that because I found out I had a mold exposure that was 8 years, had a healthy pregnancy, had a beautiful baby boy who's now 6 years old, breastfed for 3.5 years. And it was like at that 3-year mark that I learned about the placenta and breast milk. And I was like, what did I do? I breastfed him too long. But I think that there's too many benefits there.
Way. Speaking of frequency medicine, like that the bonding is so important. Yeah.
So a question that I'm just thinking of when you're talking about kind of enhancing the immune system, I know that we tend to look at the nervous system and controlling mast cells as an initial kind of approach for adults a lot of times. And so, would you instead with kids move more toward their immune systems and skin detoxification initially?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I probably address mold differently than anybody out there for adults and for kids. But yeah, for kids, I mean, if we can get them detoxified, and for my comfort level, because I've worked with families for all my career, as long as the baby is eating some kind of solid food for 50% of their diet or more, I treat them the same as an adult. I just adjust the dosing. So I still use all of the, milk thistle. And the only key, though, is that I would use aloe as the binder, because aloe also, a fourth thing that it does, so it's immune modulator, it's a binder for the mycotoxins, pulls them out, and a mast cell stabilizer, but also it enhances nutrient delivery across the intestinal wall. And you take it with food. So it makes it so easy for families. But so as long as they're eating food, we can use aloe as that binder, and it'll help enhance their nutrient delivery in a gut that's been completely destroyed. A fifth thing that it does is it's very mucilage. It's called a mucilage. That's the herby term for it. And the way I think of it is it builds up that glycocalyx mucus lining in a healthy way. So then their microbiome has something to stick to. Because so many of our things that we're doing are so caustic, like NAC and ALA and glutathione. These are all things that have a lot of sulfur in them. And that can really wear away that juicy mucus layer in the gut. So balancing the detox with things that are also nourishing is so important. I don't know if I answered your question, Alex. But yeah, pretty much I do everything for kids I do for the adults, except for, be mindful about the binder. And I don't do nasal sprays because their nasal passages haven't been developed. So I use essential oil inhaler sticks, or steam inhalations, or those kinds of things instead of nasal spray.
I was kind of taught that many of the sinuses aren't really fully developed till age 6 either. So that's not like when I would see kids that were 1 year old and the parents would say, well, they have a sinus infection. We have to start looking somewhere else and things like that. And for the aloe vera that you're using, are you avoiding any that have the leaf ground into the fillet?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that. So the studies show that the aloe has to be only inner leaf for this. The only part of, let me rephrase that. The only part of the aloe that has this effect is the inner leaf. The outer leaf is the laxative. So this is inner leaf only, and it needs to be a certain length of the polysaccharide chain. So we measure by Daltons. There, and I'm developing a product, or there are a couple products out there that you have to low heat dry it or freeze dry it to retain the Daltons. And when you can hit that Dalton length, that's when you get the magic. So an aloe juice, if it's been heated, I haven't found aloe juice that is an inner fillet to be as good at the immune modulating piece or the binding piece, but it does help with the mucilage piece. Yeah.
So did you ever use George's aloe vera juice?
I mean, we've used all kinds of juice, but I don't know about George's. Is it cool dried or pressed?
It's a good question. You have to go and ask that. I know that it only comes from the inner leaf, and that people, it doesn't have much of a taste, and people can tolerate it really well. And you can get it in gallon sizes. So
nice. Yeah, I mean, check it out. If there's something about the pressing that can shorten those chains. So, but I use aloe juice for all kinds of different conditions. But mold, when we're looking for that kind of 5-point effect to get the binding part and the immune modulating part, trying to get that innate immune system lifted so they don't have to be such a allergic kid.
I want to go ahead.
Number two is that we see, like in adults, we see so many adults with salicylate intolerance, oxalate intolerance, and for the salicylates, we're limited in what herbal products we can use, even the aloe and things like that. Now, do you see those types of intolerances in the really young children as well? I know I have in kids that are like 10 years old and older, but how about the really young ones?
Yeah, sure. And the salicylates are really, really good for us. They're the anti-inflammatory. They keep the blood thin. They reduce pain in our body. But if you have a mold that has colonized your body that's making patulin, and there are a few species that make this mycotoxin, if you eat a salicylate, that mold will change the salicylate into patulin. So you're actually feeding the mold when you give a salicylate. And so the answer there is get rid of the mold that's able to do that, in my view. And to get rid of it, often if they have salicylate sensitivity, we can't use the herbal antifungals either. Salicylates, the problem with that is that, again, you're feeding the mold that's in their body and it's saying, thank you very much, And so the wisdom of the body is, I'm going to have a bad reaction to this food to stop feeding that invader, So we want to get them on antifungals as quickly as possible, or at least that's where I'm seeing success. But before we do that, we need to get their omega-3s up very high. There have been a couple of studies, very small studies, and it hasn't been repeated in an actual study, but it's been repeated in my practice multiple times. The adult dose that they gave of omega-3s was 10 grams a day for 6 weeks. So we adjust that to, it's based on 150-pound adult. We adjust that by the kid's weight. What they found in the study is their salicylate sensitivities went away completely. They were able to eat all of the foods. They were able to, bring it back into their diet, except it wasn't durable. So the minute you take away that dose, people's salicylate symptoms came back. And to me, that is an indicator that there's colonization. So since we know salicylates are going to feed patulin, what I do is I get them up on the omega-3s 4 to 6 weeks, get them started on an antifungal that won't contribute to the salicylates and also won't tax the glucuronidation pathway, which is what all of the triazoles do. So I'll use amphotericin B orally in a suspension, modify the dose for the kids. And when we can get on top of the fungus, we can bring back aloe quickly as a binder. And then we can start to kind of get through the program of getting rid of the invaders.
Wow.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times in my practice, the ones who have mast cell issues are the most colonized people, and it's moving. It's when the mold is trying to move into the body. It's so different. Mold is so different than yeast. Yeast are single cell, and they grow by budding. And I know you get doctors know this, but a mold spore grows by hyphal growth, which means it's literally sending a root down and trying to lock into the basement lining of the intestines. When that happens, that is the best inducer of mast cells. Other than parasites, that is the best inducer of mast cells. Like, so to me, that's a sign when someone has mast cell problems that they're trying to blow out those hyphal fragments. They're trying to get rid of the root. And it's a brilliant response by the body. It's not a broken response. It's your body doing exactly what it should be doing in an unnatural environment where fungus is trying to win.
Yeah.
It's just like when you see a tree that gets fungus in the forest, you see weeping of the sap. That's probably not really great for the tree, but it's doing the best it can with the problem.
I say that all the time, that the body's really smart, and that so my background's in anthropology and, studying how humans biologically evolved, right? Outside in nature. And that's like the whole idea of people are like, oh, the temperature difference, right? That really activates me. And I'm like, yeah, because we were meant to be outside in one temperature, and now we have air conditioned. So I see a lot of this mast cell coming up is the body's adaptation to our mismatch, our biological mismatch to the modern environment that we're in. So I love that tree example, and even just the mast cell example, like mast cell activation syndrome, as a result of what's inside the body and how is it adapting to get rid of that. That's a really cool analogy.
It's doing its best,
We're getting a lot of questions about which specific aloe you've been using.
So full disclosure, I am the medical director and formulator for Alight Health Formulas. So that is the one I'm using because I'm making it. So it's called Gentle Bind. And it's a long chain. It's, we have all the tech sheets, and if anyone wants to see certificate of analysis, blah, blah, blah. But that I found, I read the research on aloe, and I just wasn't getting the responses I was expecting. And then, I contacted I was using the, now it's just lost me, but the juice, the aloe juice, the cold pressed inner fillet, desert, it's gone now. Anyway, something you get at a health food store, it's organic, it was whatever. And I still wasn't seeing the natural killer cell count come up. And I'm like, that's not what the research shows though, and I wasn't seeing the mycotoxins come down as quickly as I had expected. When we got this long chain one, that's when we really moved the needle.
Yeah, so that answers Tara's question, the specific brand. Can you say it again for everyone?
Sure. Alight Health Formulas, Gentle Bind. And it's in a capsule. You can open the capsule and mix it into anything. Just a kind of, parent to parent tip. The best thing is like a peach sauce or something thick like that, applesauce, peach sauce, or a lot of the parents in my practice taught me about melted mango ice cream. So like if the kid's dairy free, which a lot are, a coconut mango, you just take a tablespoon, melt a little bit of it, mix the aloe in, and it goes down just fine. Aloe naturally is a little bit bitter, even on the inner fillet, but if it's really bitter, your aloe probably has the outer leaf in it. So the outer leaf is really where the bitterness is. And the reason why you want to do it quickly is that the aloe will start to adsorb whatever you mix it in. And you want it to be binding the junk. So, mix it quick, eat it quick, and then have it do the binding actually in your intestines.
So you mentioned you could take it with food, but you kind of also want it to bind
It'll find it. The
Okay.
long chain is that's the key, is that it locks into the mycotoxins that are available to be bound, whether there's food or not.
So that answers a lot of our aloe questions. I mean, there's a lot out there, but you want to look for the long chain one. You want to look for, it can be a powder capsule, some of the juice ones you may want to look into. And then obviously dosage, we can't say specifically because for children, it's going to be based on weight.
Based on weight. So typically in an adult, depending on their load or their mast cell reactivity, we can do either 2 a day or 3 a day with a meal. So usually patients are really mast cell-y. They're just doing breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it is amazing. You see skin clear up. You see, more ability to eat food, just all these things that just kind of calm down.
Yeah. You had also mentioned you don't do like sinus sprays with young children. At like maybe at what age do you? And then Megan's asking what can be used to kill nasal colonization in sinuses. So I'm assuming children, but I don't know if she's asking specifically for children.
Yeah. The nasal sprays, it'll be dependent on the kid, but usually around age 7 is when we would start to entertain that idea of spraying in. And then what I do for the younger ones is we can do steam inhalations. I have handouts on my website with how to do a steam inhalation. What it turns out is that a lot of these plants that are antimicrobial usually are anti many microbes, so not just fungus, but also bacteria. So like the Marcons, the MRSAs, and when they're steamed, they become more potent. So it's also very calming and they're anti-inflammatory. So a steam inhalation is a great way to go. It does take more time, but a lot of times the kids will ask for it because they like how it makes them feel. It's calming, and I think the tenting, especially in our busy world, just being able to be in your own cave for that little bit of time seems to be very calming to kids. All the instructions, I have some videos on my website that you can do how to.
I have a parent tip for the tenting. If they have one of those learning towers that like they stand at the kitchen counter with, you can put them on the ground and put the bowl for the steam on their like little platform where they normally stand and throw the towel over that. That's how
nice. Fort time. Right. I mean, again, make it fun. Like in my pandas book, I say, I can't even remember what the saying is, but basically it's like this parenting 101. If it's fun, it gets done. Mm-hmm. So, that's how, if you can make it playtime, or that's the only time they can have screen time, do it during a steam inhalation or something like that, although a lot of the steams are a little irritating to the eyes. So it's nice to have the eyes closed. The other way is essential oils in nasal sticks. So we just launched 3 different blends that all do the same thing. So they're all antifungal, antibiotic, specifically thinking about Marcons, antibiofilm. They reduce histamine, they reduce inflammation, and they balance the limbic system. So it's a blend of 7 or 8 herbs, depending on the blend. All of them do the same thing. It's just I made different smells because not everybody likes some people are like, I don't like sandalwood. And other people are like, I love sandalwood. So I created 3 different blends, but they all do that same thing. And in our medicinary, what we used to do is I would line them up, put 2 or 3 in a line of what were the antifungals and antibacterials, put 2 or 3 in a line that were the limbic ones, put 2 or 3 in a line that were antibiofilm, and then have them smell it. And then we would put it into a little nasal stick for them to take home. So now this is available also through Alight now. I just grabbed our favorite blends for most people and put those into nasal sticks. The Olbas inhalers are also nice. They're eucalyptus. Eucalyptus is good for opening, but you're not going to get the other parts of that. It's good for opening and also biofilm, but you're not going to necessarily get the antifungal, antibiotic, and the limbic piece to it. There's also a nice one from True 47. Their immune one is really lovely. So lots of nasal stick options. Yeah. The other thing with kids is that often you don't need to go as hard on the anti if you can do more supporting of the pro. So in kids, a lot of times we start, before we put any of the essential oils or steams or anything, we'll start with just swabbing Lactobacillus sacchii in their nose. That's the natural probiotic that's typically in our nose. It's Lactobacillus sacchii and casei. Some kids get a little more mucousy with the casei, so I start with sacchii. And a little tip is if you have a kid who loves fermented foods like salamis, prosciutto, that kind of thing, they're kind of addicted to it. Those are fermented or preserved or whatever the technical term is. That's with Lactobacillus sacchii. So they're telling you through their craving, I don't have enough of that here.
Oh, that might be my kid. He loves salami.
No, and it's like they could have a whole salami sandwich, not just like one accented or whatever. They're like, yeah.
And well, then you get in your head because it's higher histamine, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, and they're just telling you, my nose needs more sacchii. And typically, if we've done that, and you could do that for 3 or 4 weeks, that's a good inoculation, and then take it away. If they go back to eating all that stuff, or they're, craving more, then they certainly have colonization, because a little bit of probiotic for a month in their nose should be a good inoculation for a kid who's out of mold and, able to rebalance. Also in pandas and pans, if we see a lot of eye ticks, I will consider that a colonized kid now. I mean, I've done tons of nasal swabs, and now I can just tell you, if they're eye ticking, they have colonization in their nose. And so we can do that with, in the morning, they could do the probiotics. At night, we do the anti stuff, and a few sniffs of inhalational sticks throughout the day and get rid of it.
For the Lactobacillus sakei, do you have them drink the solution that's left after you mix up the powder?
I don't, because it's real specific to the sinuses. So we just have them add just a little bit of the, if you've ever gotten it, anyone listening, it's the itty bittiest little spoon that comes with this. And you're like, really? Just mix this tiny elf-sized spoon. Yeah, you just put a little bit, tiny bit in water, or a lot of times I just have parents wet the end of a Q-tip and then dip and swab. And then you're not really wasting much. You can put it in a neti. I haven't seen it be as effective as just the swabbing in the nares.
And what kids do in a neti, let's be honest.
Yeah. Some.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, did you have any follow-up questions on like favorite supports for kids? She's given us, Dr. Crista's given us so many.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is great. I think that no, right now I'm still like reeling from some of the things I'm trying to copy down, because I think that, I mean, I have a lot of experience, but your experience, Dr. Crista, with the details like that, that's what I find really expands your kid, where you're just doing these simple things, but they're so effective.
Mm-hmm.
And I have also found that kids tend to get better much faster than adults, because they just don't have the history of insult into their systems.
Yeah, that's what I see too. Yeah. I just want to add one little tip, if possible. We talked about the salicylates is a patulin problem and vice versa. There's I think the only lab that's testing patulin to this date is Vibrant urine mycotoxin. So you can find out if that's going on with you, if you're someone who can excrete okay. And if not, what I do is I provoke before a urine mycotoxin testing, not with glutathione, not with all the other stuff. If it's urine testing, we need to provoke the kidneys and kidney clearance. And we can do that with bioflavonoids. So there are specific bioflavonoids for each type of mycotoxin. And this is assuming they're not salicylate sensitive. You can do this. We provoke the night before they take a big bolus, the morning of, and then I always collect 6 hours now for urine. Ideally, we would be collecting the first morning's catch and then the next 6 hours. Then mix that up really vigorously and then send a sample of that to the lab. Glutathione will alter the mass spec testing. It'll create false negatives. So I don't use that. And also, the point I wanted to make, sulfur, things with sulfur in it. So that's glutathione, NAC, ALA. If anyone is actively in mold, if they have high MPA, which is when mold is living, it secretes this. It's not a mycotoxin. So it's important to know that, because if somebody is actively in mold, they're going to have a high MPA. And then they know it's still in their house, or they have more confidence it's still in their house. And you as a practitioner can be like, it's still somewhere. We got to address that. So if they have gliotoxin, MPA, or they're still in mold, you can assume that any sulfur is going to help feed the aspergillus to make more mycotoxins. So just where more salicylates is going to help the mold in the body, more sulfur is going to help the mold in the body. Now, once they get out of the mold and we detox the gliotoxin out of them, then we want to really push the sulfur type detoxes. Because then, and usually what I do is I don't push the sulfur till they're on an antifungal, because we want to impair the mold to make that defensive tactic. And then what it'll do is it'll gobble up all the sulfur and swell and implode or lyse. And so it's a wonderful way to knock them out.
What is your favorite test for MPA?
Right now, I'm using the Vibrant urine combined with the MyMycoLab blood test. But in kids, you can't always get a blood test, So
Yeah.
if you're going to be sticking them for a vitamin D test or something, I'm like, do all the things, do vitamin A, test their MyMycoLab, just get all the things we can at one time. Their MMP9. MMP9 is a surrogate marker for mast cell activation.
The one thing I was, the reason why I was asking that is because we used to use MPA through Mosaic, and I feel like since that test change, that's not really showing up there. Is that what's going on?
Something changed there, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Neil, Nathan, and I, we have had a research study going on called the Mold IQ research. That's moldiq.org. We're just wrapping up our first phase. And we found that in the data, we were asking people's symptoms, submit a lab test, and then if they had any building information. And the Vibrant and the MyMyco currently are the best for matching the building. Real time maybe, but their panel is so short or small, we weren't able to see things that weren't covered on their tests that we knew were in the building. And they also, real time does not control for hydration. So as a practitioner, you guys know what that means, but that means that they're not controlling to see if the patient is really dehydrated or really overhydrated. And so if you're not controlling to the amount of protein in the urine, a test might go up or down simply based on hydration status for that day, rather than it went up, you must be detoxing really well. Well, maybe it went up because you were just dehydrated. They know I'm frustrated by that limitation. Simple thing that could be done.
Do you know if Dr. Nathan has switched from using real-time lab? Because last time we had him on, he was still like, that's my top test.
Yeah, that is his top test. Yeah, no, I don't think he has and probably won't. The nice thing about real-time is that if you have a mold denier, you're more likely to find positives because of that thing, because most mold people, because of the action on ADH, which holds more water in the body, a lot of people are just chronically dehydrated. So it's a good way to find something positive to just start the conversation with the patient. So yeah, there's no perfect test is a problem. It's like, well, what people always say, what's your favorite test? And I'm like, well, what question are you trying to answer?
Great. Good point.
What's the surrogate marker again for mast cell activation?
MMP9.
Oh, okay. And what do you use for the reference range?
Just the standard.
Okay, because Richie Shoemaker used 330, which was different than what they would give you. And many of us have kind of moved away from that model. Yeah. And so you just use the regular reference range.
Well, I use it as a tracker. So if somebody starts really high, then I know that we're talking a mast cell thing. MMP9 goes into the, I know you guys practitioners know, I'm just telling the people listening, it goes into the between space. So the interstitium, this extracellular matrix area, and it breaks it down so the body can make new cells in that area. For me, mast cells will also do that. Mast cells are part of that rebuilding process by being the breakdown process. And so if we're seeing a high MMP9, we know that there are more mast cells getting recruited somewhere to break down tissue. And again, if we're thinking about, a spore can do that rooting, that's probably where all the mast cell breakdown is happening, and you get more MMP9 in that area. In my wish list is when we get into our interventional trials, the University of Florida just picked up our research, we're shifting into phase 2, is to actually get biopsy areas where we are seeing fungal colonies and see what's going on with, I expect we would see more mast cells because that's what the animal studies show, but also to see if there's more MMP9 in that locus. That would be really fascinating.
When you talked about the rooting of the spores and everything, the amphotericin is not going to necessarily get that, right? Because it's coming in from the gut. Whereas some people would say you need to come in with an azole just because you want to come in from the bloodstream also to get that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, with a salicylate person, or there are other ones that really tax the glucuronidation pathway. So we just go with amphotericin to get the first layer off. So often I might start with a nystatin just to get the yeast down, and then move to an amphotericin to get the gut lining part, just to get the burden down. And at that time, I'm also doing nasal sprays or antifungals. And then we might need to move into a Sporanox, but commonly then I would move into the plants, because then the plants are so much more effective. They're so good at preserving the microbiome, the mycobiome, so we're not going in with a big bomb. I'm about to present at the ICI conference the beneficial microbiome effects of these antifungal plants like oregano and thyme and clove. There are great animal studies that show that they enhance the commensals. So I love to shift to plants as soon as possible if I don't start there. My favorite is to start there, but again, in a salicylate sensitive kid, we need to start with the drugs because they can't have all those greens. Sometimes we can do clove though. I've had a number of kids who could tolerate a little bit of clove essential oil, like a drop in water. We kind of mix it up and we'll break that up over 4 days. So they drink a quarter cup, a quarter cup, a quarter cup. Even salicylate kids tend to tolerate that. And then it just starts to knock down the burden, the problem, the thing causing the problem in the first place.
What about using silver in the salicylate kids?
Yeah, silver doesn't have as strong of an antifungal effect on the multicellulars like the spores. They're good. It can help with the yeast, but I haven't seen it really take out spores if there's colonization. I use silver in combination a lot. I love silver.
Kimberly, I know you had a question for Dr.
Yeah. Yeah, my question was more about the nervous system in kids, right? So how do we get, what do you like to use with kids for the nervous system dysregulation part, and what are you seeing there?
Again, a lot of the essential oils, because they have an effect, aromatherapeutic effect to calm the limbic system. Yeah. And it can be really simple. Like it doesn't have to even just like a lot of times we'll put a little bit on a cotton ball, because if it's mold, you don't want to have a diffuser that's adding more moisture. So just putting a little of the essential oil on cotton balls and shoving into the four corners of a pillow so they're smelling it all night. It can be very, very simple tactics.
Yeah, the other question was more about mirror neurons and like having the parents kind of being involved in the nervous system work and how important that is.
Yeah. I mean, if you can afford the time as a parent when you're doing those steam tenting, like get in the fort with them, have a set up little fort space that is the healing space. That's a time where you guys talk, connect.
I think one thing we found is oftentimes the parent, and by this, it's often the mother, because the mother's one who usually takes responsibility for the care of the children, that when they're dysregulated, when their nervous system is dysregulated, the kid's nervous system is dysregulated.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's age old. When mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Yeah. And I feel like families get so much in the chaos of it. It's easy to forget the number one important thing, which is get outside, connect with nature, actually schedule outside time every day. I know when my kids had PANS and Lyme and all that, their doctor used to say, your kids are the most healthy with all the things that they have going on. What are you doing? And I was like, well, we only eat real food and we get outside every day. It's actually on the schedule.
Yeah. Okay. How are you on time? Because I know we started a little late, so I want to see if we can answer some of the audience questions.
Yeah, I can probably go about 15 more minutes.
15 more minutes. Okay, great. All right. Question number one. I'm just going in order that they came in. Can you talk about actinos in kids? So this is not something that we've covered on another show before, really. So
yeah. So actinos, interestingly, love to eat fungus. It's their favorite food. So if there is a high actino problem in a house, and it isn't from like a sewer drain issue or, bad drains, which it can be just strictly from drains, but typically there's something feeding them. So, and actinos can be a real problem. They are a bacteria, and they're a bacteria that makes their metabolite. So where mold will naturally make mycophenolic acid, or MPA, which is highly immune suppressive. Actinos in their nature make antibiotics. So you could be in an actino-infested moldy home and be getting the immune suppression from the mycophenolic acid and the mycotoxins, and then this antibiotic effect, which when we knock out the good biome of our bodies and our sinuses, and fungus is there and you're immune suppressed, that's how we get colonization. So we have to kind of work in both mold and actinos. We have to be thinking about the bug itself, so the fungus itself or the bacteria itself. So we need to reset those biomes, and also their metabolite and the effect of those metabolites. So with actinos, I do a lot more probiotic things to get the biome set. I like to use the bacillus species, so like Microbiome Labs Megaspore. That can cause a lot of die-off, so you have to kind of work in with, as Beth used to say, with sprinkles. But there are a lot of bacillus that not only reset the biome by resetting the pH, they also, a lot of them can chew up mycotoxins. So we get like more bang for your buck always. That's what I like to use, things that have multiple effects. So we're not having to shove so much things in our kids and do all that negotiation.
Yeah. Okay, next question.
And I do, by the way, I have a masterclass on actinos. So if that's a big problem for you, that's recorded. I'm doing monthly masterclasses that do a deep dive down into like specific topics like salicylates and actinos and oxalates, and so that you can, take the deep dive, and it's the recording, but each month I'm taking on a new topic. So, yeah.
All right. When you say that mold can present in the skin in children, could this also be I don't know if I'm going to say this right. Vitiglio.
Yeah,
vitiligo.
Vitiligo, that's fine. It's an autoimmune condition. So I don't think of it as much of a skin condition. It's a skin presentation of an autoimmune condition. So I'd be looking at it from an autoimmune place more than a skin problem.
What do you use for a child's gut if they're presenting acid reflux abdominal pain?
Licorice, and not the candy. If it's tolerated, licorice root is wonderful for both of those. Often I will combine it with ginger in maybe a tea or something like that, because ginger will reduce pain. So if they can tolerate those kind of things, and it's a really sweet, licorice root is very sweet. So it goes down just fine.
There's not the deglycerinated, it's the straight.
Mm-hmm. Just straight. Yeah. And if there's blood pressure issues, I'm glad you mentioned that, Alex. Actually, if there's blood pressure issues, you can use a deglycerinated version. It's a little chewable that will not have the blood pressure effect. But a lot of these kids are adrenally blasted. Their mast cells, when the immune system is so activated, it's exhausting to the adrenals, because they are the ones that are having to manage all of it. And licorice is a lovely adaptogen, is what it's called. So it's like adrenal food. And I love that it's the adaptogens can either be a taproot, so they go deep down, or they can be a spreader. And what I love about licorice is it's a spreader, it's a rhizome. And so it helps also with community building and feeling more supported that way. Like you're held by a net better.
Yeah, and the kids don't. I've seen the blood pressure problems in adults, and also the swelling and the weight gain and things like that. But the kids don't tend to have a blood pressure problem very, very often.
No, they're not eating all that sodium chloride in conjunction with it.
Do you use glandulars for adrenal as well?
Mm-hmm. Yep, if indicated. It's always the huge toolbox. What's being called for at the moment,
Yeah, I know that our own experiences will often help to dictate what we practice. And when I had very low adrenal function, I found that the mixture of glandulars was much better than just the adrenal cortex, something like an adrenal rebuilder that had the hypothalamus and the pituitary in it also.
Yeah, I really like to use frequency-specific microcurrent. You would ask what I do for the limbic, the nervous system. That's like magic. And what's lovely about most of those protocols is that even if what you're doing is trying to reduce the allergic reactions, it's also frequencies for the pineal gland, the pons, the hypothalamus, the medulla, all this, like this, like the reptilian brain, the things that are just like safety. And so they can just run these, and I'll see kids, I'll know that where I like to use it diagnostically, I'll watch the frequency where they start to just like get droopy and then they conk out, and I'm like, okay, your hypothalamus is inflamed because you just went to sleep on that frequency. So that's another nice tool. The way that I do it is I don't allow them to have any other electronic, because it's a frequency based thing. So not like watching an iPad or, watching a show. They have to be device free. And a lot of them just having to lay there or sit there in their comfy chair without a device, they will conk out anyway because they're adrenally exhausted. But sometimes you can kind of watch, like, where in the protocol did they go to sleep? And that tells you where you can intervene.
Are they usually renting like a machine or? Yeah.
Yep. Ollie Health has them. OLLIE has machines you can rent, and they're preloaded with protocols.
That's great.
I thought of another question earlier about like the testing of children, because they're not as like their detox pathways, right? Are they metabolizing these mycotoxins? Do you see more frequently like negative tests in children, or do you often get like an accurate urine test?
I see more positives than adults.
Okay. Okay. Someone was asking, okay, I'm not sure when this was in the show. So do you need to fully open detox pathways to start this? It's kind of around when we were talking about aloe. But maybe skip that, and Karen can write in when she was asking what to start.
Sure. Yeah, typically I can just tell you the way that I think about it is I do the renourishing, like with the omegas. There's great animal research that shows that DHA is a protective nutrient. It sits in the cell membrane, and if you have enough DHA, even if a mycotoxin is trying to get into that cell, DHA will prevent that. So it's cell protective, and once those mycotoxins get in the cell, that's when they start causing mitochondrial damage. So if somebody has a lot of mitochondrial damage, a lot of exhaustion, I'm like, well, let's get your DHA up. And of course, people don't absorb DHA very well if you have mold, because it messes up your absorption. So we try to use triglyceride forms. So I kind of think about those things like vitamin D, because we know it downregulates D. We know DHA is a protective nutrient. So just kind of those foundational things. Then I do bioflavonoids, and I have a little rule of thumb: bioflavonoids before binders, because the bioflavonoids do the kidney clearance. So you have 2 kidneys and only 1 liver. So we could be doubling your clearing. And so those are what I'm using for clearing pathways. And then I can bring in the binder, the aloe.
So Karen was asking about dosage for omega-3s, because earlier you had said a pretty high dose of something for like 4 to 6 weeks. But this is kind of an interesting question too, because of how much you're saying the DHA is so protective, and everyone's in the wellness world is like demonizing fish oil.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, this isn't advice for a healthy person. This is advice for somebody who's sick. And so you can demonize it all you want, but the research for this condition, for a therapeutic time, not lifetime maintenance. And my experience using the research in my own clinical practice is DHA is very beneficial. So, and the study about salicylates, if you don't have salicylate sensitivity, DHA is still protective. So I try to go for an adult dose of between 3 to 5 grams a day and break that up throughout the day. So a kid dose would be whatever their body weight is divided by 150. That's your fraction. And then you take that times that 3 to 5 gram dose. But if it's salicylates, the research is that the more you can get up to that 10 gram and hold it until you can get the person on the antifungals, so we can stop the mold in their body from making more patulin, and then the salicylate sensitivity goes away. You get your food back.
Yeah, one of the things that came up, I had a patient who was like a Harvard professor and was hired to look at fish oils and found that so many of them are rancid. And for our people with histamine sensitivity, any kind of rancidity is going to drive them crazy. And so I know you have a DHA absorb on your website. Does that have the EPA in it also, or
5 to 1 DHA to EPA.
Okay.
With EPA gets sometimes will help with escorting into certain tissues, so more nervous system. So yeah, we just have that little bit of EPA to be the escort.
And so how do they extract that? Are they processing it on the boat itself so that it's not sitting in these giant containers until they get back to port?
The fish are bled immediately, which helps with the rancidity, and then they go into the fish spa, so they get so they're bled initially, and then they get into the cold, and then they're cold pressed. Mm-hmm. It's where they don't bleed them, then things start to break down.
Yeah.
For any who fish or fly fish, I love to fly fish. Faster you can get them bled, the better that fish tastes. Which sounds terrible. It's very brutal, but I like fish.
Oh, so many questions. All right. We didn't talk about oxalates at all. Ideas on how to support a preteen going through an oxalate dump. Recently cut oxalates on top of low histamine diet. Looking to get through the dump phase in order to tolerate some other supports.
Yeah, so I have a whole guideline of that in my oxalates course, where the thing that drives me a little bit crazy about food lists is that they're not talking about portion. They're not adjusting for portion.
Yeah.
So people become terrified of something, and it's like, well, you would never eat a bowl of, parsley at once unless you're eating tabbouleh, and then you would know smart enough to do that. So, or use the curly leaf like Beth taught me. So the slow reduction of the oxalate food, so you don't get that dump. Typically I'm going, I try to cut it by about 1/10 of what you were eating a day. And again, the best producers of oxalates in the body is yeast and mold. So the faster we can get you on antifungals, the better. We just did an antifungal masterclass, and people were like, I had no idea I was using such wimpy doses of antifungals. When you use the plants, they're like food. So you need to repeat them 4 times a day to get ahead of it. So there's a big difference between fungal resistance, like, oh, I'm taking it, it's not working, and fungal persistence, which means you're not treating it high enough. So we need to go a lot higher for a lot longer. And that really, stopping the production of them is the key. So you can start with the diet. None of us should be eating a ton of oxalates anyway. We have so many oxalates in our diets right now that are, beets, chard. Basically, chard is a beet. They've, worked with it, hybridized it to become chard. But those are all things that are very high in oxalates, and they are like little crystals. They're little shards, in the body. There are some benefits to them in a small amount. Again, from that like MMP9 idea that they can open up tissues and keep flow going. But there's a level where we have so much, it's actually causing more internal damage. So yeah, I usually go about 1/10 to 1/15, depending on the patient. If tolerated, a plant-based citrate really helps you get to the reduction without a big dump, because the citrate will bind. So there are lemon juice-based citrates, not aspergillus formed citrates. Most citrate on the market is a fermentation product of aspergillus, and that's why a lot of mold sick people don't tolerate them. But a plant-based one, like through lemon juice, I have patients that they don't want to, they don't have the money. I mean, let's face it, this is tough on the budget. They'll get a concentrated organic lemon juice, unsweetened, in the fridge, or keep it in the freezer, take a tablespoon of that out and have that in water all throughout the day, and that helps to reduce that oxalate dump. The bladder infections and the kidney pain and all of that, because the citrate is binding up those oxalates.
So are you saying that when it's a plant-based citrate, it's not as fermented as what you would get when you're taking supplements that are magnesium citrate or calcium citrate or things like that?
Right. It's not fermented at all. It's just a natural citrate in the juice. Yeah.
And that might not be great for someone whose histamine bucket's super, super high, but it also goes to show that this isn't black and white. And so some of the, everyone gets into this, like this or that thinking, where in reality, there's that middle ground that you have to experiment with to see what you as an individual can handle.
Yeah. And like we're working on trying to get a lime-based citrate so that, you know, at least takes one less level of sensitivity.
Would cutting a lemon and just squeezing a little bit in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
And I learned this from my patients that, is it muddled or mulled? Muddled, when you really, you know, smash it, taking lemons and limes and smashing them and muddling them. This has been reducing Herxheimer reactions in my patients. You know, they taught me, I'm like, okay, we're going to muddle some lemons and limes. You put some pink salt in there, add a little water, and then that's your remedy so you can get out of the Herx. It's really lovely.
Cool.
So I'm sorry, you guys, I do have to go to my next meeting, but I really appreciate this. For you practitioners, like I do have courses and training. So all that stuff I was talking about, salicylates, and that's all in the updates in mold course. If you guys have, anyone listening has already done my other one, there's always so much more to talk about. So I created a new practitioner course, shorter though, only 3 hours.
Such a pleasure to have you here. Really appreciate it.
Thank
you
so much for your time.
Thanks for the honor, you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well,
I'm going to let Jill Crista jump off. Just a reminder that it is mold month. Next week, we are doing a live Q&A on mold. So if your question didn't get answered today and you'd like to join us, it's going to be at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And let's see. I want to give you guys who are still on with us, I know some people have dropped off. We have a new free guide with toxicity quiz. Let me grab you guys the banner real quick. It is going to be mastcell360.com/mold guide. So this is a brand new resource that we've created, and we are excited to share with our community. If you are looking for more resources on kind of order of operations, how do you kind of put together your own mold protocol? Where do you even start as far as testing? We do have a mold course here at MastCell360 as well. I'm going to share Jill Crista's website additionally, as she has not a million, but many, many more resources on her site as well for you guys to explore to see what is the best step for you. But our course you can find at mastcell360.com/mold-course. So that you guys can find there. And if you're really just looking for some one-on-one support and don't know where to even begin to get that mold testing done, we have 2 levels of support within our clinic right now. Foundational, which is strategy session. So this is where we can provide that one-on-one guidance to get you kind of going. And then our advanced track is that long-term care with health coaching support as well as lead practitioner support. So we are so happy that you guys were able to join us today. And for those who are wondering about all the resources that Dr. Crista shared, you can find her at drcrista.com. So thank you guys again for being with us. And Alex and Kim, I know some people are still dropping off, but if you had, for the parents who are overwhelmed, since we mostly talked about kids today, what words of encouragement or starting steps would you like to share with them to feel empowered in supporting their kids?
You want to go ahead, Kim?
No, you go ahead, and then I'll go.
Well, I just think that, first of all, as parents, you have such an advantage because you love your kids, and your kids are going to respond so much to what you do and the confidence that you have in the practitioners that you have, and just getting involved in there and showing them that you care. And as Dr. Crista said too, the kids tend to get better much faster, and the trick is oftentimes to get them to accept the treatment, and as soon as they see it works, they will ask you for it sometimes. I mean, I've had kids who, will say to their parents, "Are you trying to kill me? You got gluten in that blah, blah, blah," and so just get them involved and make it as pleasurable as possible and avoid the fighting that we oftentimes take this medicine kind of thing. But they respond, and they can be real partners in their own healthcare.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I mean, just kids reflect what they see. Some of the best success cases we've seen of families is when a parent, especially a mother, starts their own healing journey and the kids come along, because you're cleaning up the environment, you're cleaning up the food, because mom does all that stuff, right? Because you live together and you eat together. So the more that the mom can lead with their health and fill their cup first, the more that's going to overflow and really, really support the kids.
And I'm just going to leave people with, do not ignore your instinct as a mother too, because no one knows your child better than you do. And so if there is like that nagging gut feeling that something's not right, don't ignore that, because there's mother's intuition. I think it's a term for a reason. So, all right, guys, thanks so much for being with us today. We'll see you next time.
Bye.